afternoon, class. This is Ms. Friesen, 8th grade mathematics, North Parkway Middle School. Just want to take you through a little lesson here. I'm taking a class at UT Martin for technology, and so I want to take you through a lesson plan in case you decide you want to be a teacher one day and you go to UT. And so I'm going to take you through a technology-based lesson plan today. That's what we're going to do today. So we're going to implement a little bit of what I'm learning with a little bit of what you're learning. So let's get started here. So my assignment is to create a technology-based lesson plan and create a YouTube video and upload it so that my teacher can check it out, you can check it out, and so we can just have a little fun with technology and learning all at the same time. So again, I'm Ms. Friesen, Ms. Candace Friesen, 8th grade mathematics, North Parkway Middle School, Jackson, Tennessee. And so the standard that we'll be reviewing, two standards actually, we're preparing you for Tennessee Ready, which is coming up in April. Kind of scary, kind of fun. So the standards are 8NSA1, 8NS. A is in Apple 1, and 8N is in Nancy, S, A is in Apple 2. So 8NSA1, scholars will be able to review the criteria for numbers that are irrational. And 8NSA2 gets into using rational approximations of irrational numbers to compare the size of irrational numbers. So basically, you're working with rational numbers and irrational numbers, their properties, how they're different, how they may be alike, how do they compare to each other, where do they fall on the number line. We're going to use some fun things to just kind of go through that today. Some of our objectives today is students will be able to not only master the principles of rational and irrational numbers, the information will be presented using a Promethean board. So when I'm doing the lesson in my classroom, I'll be using a Promethean board to teach, and that's a smart board. That's the big board that's in our classroom that's on the wall. Ms. Friesen hooks her computer up to it with an HDMI cord and a USB port, and use power cord for electricity. And so I'm able to show you on the Promethean board what I can see on my computer. And we usually use PowerPoint. We're getting into a little bit of Padlet on some days, but for this day in instruction, we'll be using PowerPoint. The scholar and you guys will be assessed using Master Connect, which is found in Clever. So at the end of the lesson, just like I normally do, I'm going to check for some understanding throughout with whiteboards. But at the end, you're going to do an exit ticket so that I can see where we are in terms of mastery, where we may be approaching, or where we may be proficient. And so Master Connect is a computer-based program that allows me to do that. It allows you also to see red, green, yellow, blue, where you are in terms of mastery at the end, and you guys get a kick out of that. You'll be allowed to complete the questions that prepare you for your state assessment that you'll have at the end of the school year. So we're trying to get you ready for that. Some of our materials and resources that we'll be using is some paper handouts, so a little bit of the old mixed with the new. Chromebooks that each of you have been assigned. In your homeroom classes, each of you has a Chromebook. We'll be using that, like I've already said, the Promethean board, which is your smart board. Master Connect, which you access through Clever, and you use your email address and your password to do that. And then I do a little bit of cold calling, so I'm going to use the spin wheel a little bit to cold call you, and that means that I'll spin a wheel, it'll get on your number, whatever your seat assigned number is, and if I call your number, you'll answer the question. So that's what we'll use a little bit old with the new technology of the spin wheel and then calling you out so that you can answer questions. Accommodations and adaptations. Well, we have to do things. Not all of us learn the same. So some of us have some things that help us just kind of learn better. And so we'll be working individually throughout the lesson, but we'll also be allowed to assist scholars who may be struggling with questioning, because Ms. Friesen, she asks questions. So I'll cold call you, I'll ask you a question about the lesson, about rational, irrational numbers. And you never know who's going to get called on, and some of us don't learn the same. And so I may kind of change the wording, because if somebody asks me and says me, Ms. Friesen, maybe say that in a different way, or Ms. Friesen, I don't understand that, then you'll hear me rephrase it in a way that we can all get it. I'll allow for some accountable talk. So that means that you're speaking to me in a mathematical, educated answer. So you'll say things like, I think, or Ms. Friesen, I don't agree, or I respectfully disagree. And And then some of my scholars that may need things to be taught in a different way, we'll offer some turn and talk, some partner work at some point. Some of my scholars that English is not their first language, you'll be allowed to partner with somebody that can translate and explain it to you in your first language so that we can help with that. But we also want to strengthen English as a second language. So we'll get into some of that. Motivating students, anticipatory sets. So what we're doing here is, this is the beginning of the lesson. This is kind of where Ms. Freisen tries to hook you. And so that's like where we're going to start with our instruction when I'm teaching you about rational, irrational numbers. And this is a review day, but remember a long time ago when we first presented rational and irrational numbers, Ms. Freisen said something like, what do you think of when you hear the words rational and irrational? So what do you think of? When I think of rational or irrational, when I think irrational, I think cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Maybe somebody that kind of thinks outside the box, a little bit different, not logical. And so I put that and I connect that. And how does that relate to numbers? Well, it's numbers that you don't necessarily see every day. When you're dialing a number, sending a text message, you don't generally put numbers like pi in it. When you're doing math, you don't generally use pi, and pi happens to be an irrational number. So they're numbers they're real numbers, but they're a little bit different from just your everyday rational numbers. And so which number comes first to mind when you hear irrational numbers? And I've already said it for you. Pi comes first. So those are some of the things that we'll be doing throughout the lesson to kind of hook you into the lesson. Instructional procedures. So what we'll do is, so before we start using computers, we'll come in, and actually we use computers first. We'll use computers first this day. And we'll come in and Ms. Freisen will let you get on the computer and you'll do your Do Now and Master Connect. And your Do Now is a spiral review. It's things that I've already taught you. You'll go through that. You'll complete it in Master Connect. It's usually between 3 and 5 questions. And each question is a different standard. And you'll be allowed to be assessed using your Chromebook on Master Connect, which you access Master Connect by using Clever. You'll go in, you'll use your school assigned email address, school assigned password, and you'll complete your Do Now assignment. So we begin the day with technology usually every day. That's our focusing activity. That's to get us started. So once we start the lesson, Ms. Freisen is usually using the technology during the lesson. I'm using my computer, Promethean or Smartboard, PowerPoint presentation, and you usually have paper handouts. So that's how that day will work. You'll be given a paper handout to follow along with me as I'm doing the lesson. So I'll do some modeling, which means it's some guided practice, and I'll go through it and I'll be explaining again rational, irrational numbers, the properties, the characteristics, how to compare them, and then you guys will have opportunity on your paper to follow along as we get into some, because we start the lesson with I do's. Ms. Freisen is modeling. Then we get into a little bit of we do. That's both of us working. So you'll be on your paper as I'm modeling on the board using PowerPoint, using the annotation feature on the Promethean board. And you'll be on your paper going through with me through the process of just discovering more, being reviewed, and refreshing on rational and irrational numbers. So you'll be allowed to see in real time what I'm doing on the board as you're working on the paper, and we're going through it. And we'll go through step by step with the guided practice, and then you'll be allowed to go back and forth with me. So that allows for a little bit of accountable talk, analytical thinking. I'll be asking open-ended questions. Usually when you give me an answer about a rational, irrational number, or whatever problem we're on, Ms. Freisen is generally going to ask you guys why, so that I understand your thinking process, so that we can look for misconceptions, so that I can see if you're really grasping the concept or are you just memorizing answers. We'll use some anchor charts in the room, and that'll help you to be able to think analytically. And so we'll go through guided practice and then collaborative practice, where it's you and I both working and you're answering questions and you're trying to think out loud, you and your classmates. And then we do a little bit of you do, or independent practice, where you get to practice problems and use all the knowledge you gain through as we're reviewing the lessons. And you're doing that on paper still, but you're able to look at the Promethean board. You have that active real-time model in front of you along with the anchor charts to kind of show you, okay, you're able to look up and have that support to see, oh, wow, we did this here and we did this there in the problem. And so that helps you to go through and be able to do it on your own with the you do portion of the lesson. So that's our instructional procedure. Is kind of how we go through things. It's more of a gradual release. You see, I'm starting with you modeling, then we're doing it together, and then you're doing it on your own. And so you're using paper. I'm showing you on technology. Some of the days of the review, I implement videos in there to just kind of keep you engaged, because math can be fun some days, but if you got the class at 7:15 in the morning, it's not always the best. So things just to keep you engaged. Questioning, thinking, problem solving. So while we're going through the process, you'll have an opportunity to work independently. You can ask and answer questions about misconceptions, Ms. Freisen. Why are non-terminating and terminating different? I get confused sometimes, Ms. Freisen, on repeating and non-repeating. Like I get confused sometimes, Ms. Freisen, on which number goes outside the dividend. Is it the numerator, denominator? When I'm trying to form a repeating decimal or converting a fraction to a decimal, so that I can determine whether it's rational, irrational, Ms. Freisen. So we're going to go through all that. You have opportunity to ask questions. I'll ask you questions. We can figure out our misconceptions, because as we know, as we're working problems, there's always answers in there that they want you to choose, trying to trip you up. There's two that are usually wrong and two that are usually very closely related and almost alike. So we'll go through that. As I said before, we'll have some grouping. Of course, you're already sitting in fours in the classroom, which means that you're already partnered up, and I put you with people that I feel like you can work strongly with. You don't always agree with me on that, but I'm the teacher, and I'm kind of observing, and I know some of our strong areas, some of our areas of opportunity and growth that are needed, and I know who's going to play and talk when they're partnered up. So I've kind of partnered you up with all of that in mind, so that when we do have turn and talk during the lesson, you're appropriately matched. That also helps for some of my scholars, as I said before, that English is not your first language, so you're paired with somebody that can maybe kind of help with some of the language that you may not be as familiar with. Of course, at the end, I got to see what you know, because I've given you everything I know during the lesson. So, at the end of the lesson, we always do a little bit of assessment. So I have a think sheet for you. I'm going to go through some of those questions that are on my think sheet for you guys. Get it pulled up here. And there's a rubric attached to that. Ms. Freisen, what is a rubric? Well, a rubric is, it tells me what I'm assessing with you guys, what I'm looking for. So there are certain things that I'm looking for as you're being assessed that let me know whether you're grasping the concept or not. So I'll go ahead and go through the rubric with you, since I already have that pulled up. And the rubric, so this is where I know the evidence of what you've learned. So if you're proficient, of course, you're in the blue. So that means that you have at least 58% correct on the assessment that I give. So you answer questions on the exit ticket and the think sheet, and that you exhibit to me that you can explain the rules of irrational and rational numbers with real-world examples and rigorous questioning in alignment with the following aspects. So, that means that you can estimate the value of irrational numbers using rational approximations. That's us using the number line in class. You can compare real numbers using the number line. You can plot real numbers on the number line using your estimated values. That's like when Ms. Freisen gives you square root of 2, 2 square root of 2. So you can tell Ms. Freisen where that is on a number line. You can tell me whether that's greater than 3. You can order real numbers using the number line. That means you can tell me if I gave you the numbers 2, 3, and 5, square root of 8, and square root of 7. So that's a mixture of rational and irrational numbers. If you master it, you'll be able to tell me where to put those in order, least to greatest or greatest to least on a number line. You can make comparative statements about the size of irrational numbers. You can estimate the value of irrational expressions. You can use scratch paper on all your questions. That's a part of my rubric if you're using scratch paper, because it helps you to process and determine where you may be messing up on something or getting something right. Helps you to find your simple mistakes when we use scratch paper. So I'm looking for that even on my rubric to see if we're proficient or met. Because if I can see your process, I can help you if you kind of make a mistake. That's another reason why I use scratch paper. Grammar and spelling. So you submit me an error-free answer on the short answer responses on the think sheet. Of course, exit ticket is multiple choice, so I don't have to worry about the grammar on that because I've designed the questions, and so they're already grammatically correct. You're just picking the correct answer based on your computation. But on the think sheet, you have to actually short answer, so you have to give me correct, error-free answers on that in order to get in the blue, proficient, 58 points. Emerging, which means you're approaching, that means you made at least 38% correct on think sheet and exit ticket. So you answer questions on both documents, and you can compare rational numbers using the number line. You can order numbers on the number line. You can make comparative statements about the size of numbers. You can evaluate numerical expressions. So that means if I give you a word problem, you can evaluate numerical expressions containing rational numbers. Or if I give you an equation, you can use them. You can write the decimal approximation. So as you see, you're hitting a lot of the data points that you do in the blue, but not quite all of them when you're emerging. So you're getting there, but not quite there. Beginning, which means you scored at least 18% correct. So we're in the red there. So of course, you're hitting some of the points from the blue section, but not all of them again. And it's more of like, Ms. Rice and I kind of got it, but I'm going to need a whole lot more practice if we're in the red. So that means you're beginning to understand the concept. So that's kind of the rubric that we use for your think sheet and your exit ticket. Now let's get into your think sheet so that you can, so Ms. Bryson can read off to you some of these sample questions that we will be giving you the day that we are going over this. I just love technology because Ms. Bryson had that pulled up already, but for some reason I had closed it. But we'll get it pulled back up here for you. And it's just questions that I'll be asking you about rational and irrational numbers, just to kind of see where you are in your understanding of the concept here. Because again, like I told you before, it is definitely going to be on 10 Ready. And even when I was teaching you the first time around this concept, I told you that you will definitely be seeing it again. So we want to make sure that you're totally prepared and you don't take 10 Ready and be like, Ms. Bryson, you did not teach me any of that. I'm super mad at you. So let's get through it here. So some of the questions on the think sheet are, how can you distinguish rational and irrational numbers? So that means that you can just look at them and tell Ms. Bryson, is it rational? Is it irrational? And you know the properties that determine that, like whether it's a repeating decimal, non-terminating decimal, whether it's a fraction. All those are some of the examples of characteristics of rational and irrational numbers. And in the day that we teach this, of course, we'll have this pulled up on the board. We'll try to make it fun. But you will be assessed to where you have to write out the answers. But you're getting the information, guys, when we're teaching the lesson. Can you convert a repeating decimal to a fraction? How do we do that? So we're gonna review that as we're going through the lesson. Then you're gonna have a question that says, Kathleen makes the statement, all non-terminating decimals are irrational numbers. Is she correct? So she's made a statement about a characteristic, and so you're going to determine whether that's true or not, and then you're going to explain to Ms. Bryson in your own academic words why or why not. Alyssa says that the negative square root of 13 over 2 is a rational number because it is written as a fraction. Is she correct? Explain your answer. And now that you've mastered the difference between rational and irrational numbers, let's solve the problem in the real-world connection. So then you're going to have a question about Carla, and then there's you're explaining to me is a rational number because it cannot be written as a fraction. You're expressing it as a fraction, and you're telling me if it is irrational. So that gets into a little bit more of a complicated question that you'll have on your think sheet, and then you have to explain your reasoning. So Ms. Bryson is making you productively struggle a little bit so that I can see how your brain is working, how much of this you're really grasping, and if you're really meeting or you're exceeding what we need you to learn in terms of this standard. So that's some of our assessment at the end. We always have to do that. We have lots of fun during the lesson, but we're kind of spinning our wheels if we're not retaining the information. So before we do exit ticket and think sheet, we'll do as we normally do in the PowerPoint presentation. I'll go through the slides, we'll get to the points, dun, 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 and we'll be doing the lesson recap. And I'll give you some cool questions that are very similar to the think sheet, and you'll be able to see them in real time up on the board with Promethean. You'll get out your whiteboards and your markers, and Miss Friesen will ask you the lesson recap questions. You'll put them on your handy dandy whiteboards, and I'll say 1, 2, 3, boards up, ding, and you hold all your boards up, and I can look around the room and kind of see already before I give you the actual assessments how much you're retaining. And we also do that throughout the lesson. So that'll be the lesson for that day. As you see, it's a technology-based lesson plan. So you saw use of technology through the lesson. Ms. Friesen is using her computer, her smart board, her PowerPoint software. I'm going to be annotating a feature on the Promethean board. All that stuff's technology, and we don't even realize it. And then you'll be using, of course, paper and pencil, but at the beginning of class, you're using your Chromebook for your Do Now. At the end of class, you're using it for your exit ticket assessment. So that we are integrating, and the video will be during the PowerPoint. So we're integrating technology throughout so that you guys can remain on the cutting edge while you're learning about math. So I've implemented today, you've got a chance to see Miss Friesen is learning in a class just like you. I've made this video to kind of go through my lesson plan for you guys, give you a little snippet of what you'll be learning. But I'm in a class just like you. Isn't that cool? I'm implementing what you guys will be learning with what I'm learning. And so I thought that was pretty cool. So I went through that video with you today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope I didn't snooze you or lose you. Thanks, guys. See you next time.